Welcome to the First Things First podcast. And first things first, we need you to subscribe and leave comments letting us know what you think of the show. We're listening. I'm Nick Wright, joined by two of my favorite people, Jenna Wolfe, Cris Carter. Now, let's get the show started.
What's up? What's up? What's up? Hi, everyone. Welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. Still getting dressed. Still getting dressed.
That was for one. That's for each of us.
What up, what up, what up, Jenna?
What, did I just say what's up, what's up, what's up?
Whatever it was a hell of a start to the morning.
I'm in, I'm here.
What up, Jenna? What up?
Cap him up.
Sorry, do it again, do it again.
What up, CC? Good morning, brother. How are you? There we go.
Oh, you were
all
trying to
up
shake
late.
my hand?
Up late, man.
Well, we had reason to be. That was quite a game.
Yes,
we haven't had a national title game like that in a while. We had one in the semifinals, but we didn't. I mean, we didn't expect that. Let's just say after the semifinals, no one thought that was going to be the final game that we were going to see.
It's hard for those young kids to be able to repeat that type of effort, you know, in 8 days. But they did it.
Tale of two halves, man. That was
And just real quick, something you say all the time is some of these seniors now wake up this morning and it's all over. And that's it. So if that was the way to go out, at least you went out with it.
And that's what makes it really special.
Of course. All right, so let's get right to it. Whoever said that sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are one and the same clearly was referring to Alabama head coach Nick Saban with regards to his halftime decision to switch quarterbacks in the national championship game. Clearly, it was Alabama, it was Georgia for the title. Alabama was down 13-0 at the half, needed a boost. So Nick Saban decides to pull his starting quarterback, the guy who lost only 2 games in 2 seasons, and put in true freshman Tua Tagovailoa.
I got you, Jenna.
Yeah,
no
this
problem.
was the rendition that I didn't have the words spelled out phonetically. Tua came in, led the Tide to a 13-point comeback, capped off by a 41-yard strike in overtime to seal the 26-23 win. Nick Saban wins his 5th title at Alabama in 9 years. Here he is after the game.
I think the resiliency that this team has shown all year long certainly proves that they sort of learned something from that, and couldn't be prouder of a bunch of coaches and a bunch of players and the people in our organization who contribute to the success of the University of Alabama.
And I think preparation leading up to this point has been the key thing, you know, with our offensive coaches helping us throughout the process, you know, and just building the trust within each other.
And I thought Tua would give us a better chance and a spark, which he certainly did. And, you know, I couldn't be prouder of him taking advantage of the opportunity.
But in overtime, we didn't finish when we had to, and Alabama did. And to give them credit, but I think everybody can see that Georgia's going to be a force to be reckoned with. I'm very proud of this team and this university, and we're not going anywhere.
Good thoughts echoed there. So let's talk a little bit about Tua Tagovailoa.
You got it.
Yeah, we said it. No, let's go back. Tell me how impressive this win was for Alabama, CC.
It's very impressive. It's totally unconventional because what Alabama has done, they athlete you to death. They have more 5-star athletes on their roster than any other roster in college football. They have more depth. Not only depth at their skilled positions, we saw the depth at quarterback that they have.
Yeah.
But, man, their offense and defensive linemen, they lost their starting left tackle. I mean, who else in college football? I mean, we go over this in pro football all the time. Left tackle's gone, the offense is going to change. They put another guy in there, and they don't miss a beat. They put a freshman quarterback. This is what you call the power conferences when teams have a dynasty or teams they dominate college football. You get over-recruited. So Hurts, as a quarterback, he struggles. He's taking them to a national championship. Nick Saban at halftime goes to the true freshman, and they're getting better results because he's a better passer. What a gutsy move by Nick Saban. And to me, this will add to his legacy because he did it on an offensive standpoint. Nick has been so stubborn. I formation, run the football. He is adverse risk. That means he's not going to run an offense that has a lot of chances of turning the football over. That's why I thought it was a great marriage between him and Lane Kiffin. Lane's creativity, but Nick and the defense and the special teams, a winning formula. But he allowed the freshman, to throw the football Like I haven't seen him let veteran quarterbacks throw the football. McElroy, A.J. McCarron, he didn't even let them throw the football the way he let this young kid throw the ball, and I was impressed with that.
And it was almost out of necessity. I mean, I don't know that they wanted to, but they couldn't. Georgia has the athletes up front. Even with Bo Scarborough and that great stable of running backs, they weren't having the success. He didn't want to change quarterbacks. He didn't want to all of a sudden chuck the ball around. But he had no choice.
But as long as he's been coaching, this is not something that Nick Saban does.
Correct.
And for him in that moment to be able to realize our best chance or path to victory is through Tua and throwing the football, that's I was surprised and shocked by that.
It's remarkable, and it's a testament to the fact that Alabama's second team, guys that don't start for Alabama, people say, could Alabama beat Cleveland, the Browns? No. But Alabama's second team could be a top 15 team in the country. Take the 22 best guys that don't start for Alabama and see what their recruiting profile is. The young man that had the bit of a meltdown on the sideline, I read about him last night because I wanted to know. I was surprised that Nick Saban let him go back into the game. He had the 15-yard penalty when he threw a punch. I was surprised he didn't get thrown out. He seemed to go after a coach. So I was like, who is this young man? Oh, he was a top 200 player in the country, a top 20 player in his state, a 4-star recruit who has 5 tackles on the year because he can't get on the field in his 3rd year at Alabama. He would be the star recruit for most teams' classes, a 4-star top 20 kid from the state of Georgia. He can't get on the field. The Tua Tagovailoa was, according to 24/7, and I'm not super in-depth on the recruiting stuff, so I rely on the people who are rivals, 24/7 people like that. He's the #1 dual-threat quarterback in the country. Coming out of Hawaii, doesn't go to Oregon, doesn't go to USC, like so many of the Hawaiian kids
And he decided, and one of the things with him, he decided to go to a school that had a freshman. It looks like Jalen Hurts is going to start for 4 years at Alabama. I mean, he's a dual-threat quarterback. He's already started. He took him to a national championship as a freshman.
SEC Offensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, but Tua decides, I'm going to go there. I'm going to go to Alabama from Hawaii.
Is that a testament to Nick Saban or to the program?
Both of them. It's a testament to all three, the young man. The young man, for the culture to be able to change, to leave Hawaii and move to Alabama, to know that that's the best thing for his academics and for his football career, to be able to sit in the football laboratory of Nick Saban. I mean, that's a mature kid. His family, to be able to have the guidance to give him that. Alabama, to be able to stretch that wide, to get a kid through the Pac-12 that they not missed on, but they won over. And the institution, that they could be like, man, this kid would feel at home. So, you know, it's a trifecta there, Jenna, as far as the winners.
And a kid who was asked not to be good during the regular season, not to be good in a semifinal game, not to be good to start the game. Hey, you need to be good to save this game, to save this season, and to win us a title.
And it's not like he didn't have adversity to overcome. For the fact that they're down 13-0.
Right.
The play he threw an interception on was a called run that he misunderstood the play call. He misunderstood the play call from the sideline because he's so new, because he hasn't been doing it. So the coaches think they're calling a run. He tells his teammates we're throwing a pass, and he throws a terrible interception. And he overcomes that. In the overtime, the one thing you can't do, college football's overtime is weird. It's almost a given that you're going to get a field goal. Now, with Alabama's field goal kickers, nothing is a given. So certainly after Georgia kicks that field goal, Rodrigo Blankenship, one of the best college kickers I've seen in recent memory.
This guy.
I love him. He nails the 51-yarder.
Get you a pair of those goggles.
I love it. The specs. You know, all right, we really need 6. But if we're going to kick a field goal, we need to be as close as possible. Just the one thing you can't do. Takes a big sack on the first play, and how does he
looks
respond?
like a green freshman.
Yeah.
But the next play, he looked like he could be playing in the NFL. You're talking about a cover 2. They went trips, which means 3 receivers to the wide side of the field, single receiver on the backside. The safety, which is a veteran, started 53 games for Georgia. He looks him off to the middle of the field. He's in cover 2. He's supposed to be on the hash mark. The corner doesn't get a jam on him. Tua looks him off like a veteran after giving a rookie mistake and getting sacked, and throws a strike. I mean, when you see his arm talent, you see why you don't follow high school. But I got some good friends of mine, Trent Dilford and Joey Roberts. They helped run Elite 11, and Trent Dilford says that this kid has the it factor, and he would be a star and had predicted that he would win a Heisman Trophy.
And what does it say about Alabama that the day after they win, now you're like, oh, what's next? Well, what's next is that a true freshman could pretty much be your star, so you're set up for the next couple of years.
I do have to say, and he was gracious. After Alabama scored their first touchdown, the first player to meet Tua on the field was Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts was gracious in his interview after the game. And I know, Cece, this is maybe the athlete, non-athlete dichotomy here. I felt for Jalen. I know he's a champion now, but he now has to figure out, is my entire life being uprooted? Like, do I want to stay here and compete? Do I want to go somewhere else where I can play more likely? Like,
at Alabama, they compete. The reason why they won that national championship, because we can bring in another kid, a 5 or 4-star, and Nick Saban's going to give him every opportunity to get better. That's what Alabama's about. It's about competition, and the competition is what got them the national championship, with the coach having the guts to bench a guy who's 25-2 as a starter at Alabama.
Well, listen, they weren't down 24-0. They were down 13-0. And I don't know that there's another coach in the country that would have the confidence, not just job security. A lot of coaches have a supreme job security.
Right.
But the confidence with his place with his team, his place in history.
Or have the roster of talent.
Correct. The confidence to do it and the ability to do it.
There's only one guy.
It's
That's
just
Urban
him.
Meyer.
Oh, okay, so Urban Meyer and Nick Saban.
Yeah, and because he's got some talented guys up under him who can really throw the ball.
Jalen Hurts isn't going anywhere?
I mean, where's he going to go? He's already played 2 years of college football. He had to sit out a year, all right? He's not a pro.
Right.
He's a college quarterback. No, sit there right at Alabama. You came to Alabama to compete. Let's keep competing.
Back on First Things First, we're going viral. Alabama players celebrated their national title last night in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome in Atlanta, and exactly 202.2 miles away, thanks Google Maps, Alabama fans celebrated in the streets of Tuscaloosa.
Look at that.
I mean, if
They
you're
love
like,
some football in Tuscaloosa now.
how's that guy getting out of there? He's like, oh, I should have made it right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there's not too much class going on in Alabama today.
No.
I would highly
And
doubt
in some cities, they call that a riot. But after a college football game, it's just some good college kid revelry, I suppose.
I suppose. Well, as we've been talking about all morning, we're sticking with our big story, Alabama winning its 5th title in 9 years, beating Georgia 26-23 in overtime. This was Nick Saban's 6th national championship, his 5th as the coach of Alabama, and his 1st as a 66-year-old man. Here is Nick Saban after the game.
The message to the team tonight after this game was, I hope you take something from this game and the resiliency that you showed in this game, and it helps you be more successful in life. So it's not just about winning a championship. I mean, I know that's what you all write about and what you talk about and all that, and we like winning, and we hate losing. But there's more to it than that.
Is that the same thing you're going to hear Nick Saban tell the team next year, CC?
No. My son was on Alabama in 2009 after they won the national championship. When he met with the team the day after the national championship, they went undefeated. Best defense in the history of college football. You guys haven't won anything. Last year's team, that team is gone.
Done.
You can't rest on the laurels of all those guys. The whole team's going to the NFL. We're going to start from scratch starting today. It's amazing with Nick Saban how focused he is. So, yes, Nick Saban, he is about winning in life.
Right.
And taking something from this game that will help you as a man in your journey in life. But also, man, Nick Saban's already thinking about 2019. I can guarantee you he's calling recruits sometime this morning, making contact with them. If there's a couple scholarships open, like, this is what he does. He is truly one of the best that we've seen, not only in the profession of football, but in the profession of coaching. You can pick basketball, you can pick any sport.
Yeah.
Nick Saban would be at the top of one of those lists because of his ability to be focused and to be a great teacher of the game of football.
Well, the one thing Nick Saban is probably not thinking about right now is his own legacy, is getting ready for next year. So we will do that on his behalf. And, Nick, I will start with you. What does this do for Nick Saban's legacy? What the wins he's amassed, the success he's had?
All right, so there's almost nothing more cliche in sports talk than creating Mount Rushmores, but I'm just going to broach it quickly.
But I'm going to do it regardless.
Well, he starts being the discussion of all coaches in all sports, as Cece mentioned. Like, where is he in the college football hierarchy? Well, he's now tied Bear Bryant. He's done it in fewer years. He's won titles at multiple schools. His team's seemingly never bad. He had success at Michigan State. They then win a title at LSU. He goes to Alabama. He has a decade of dominance, unlike anything I've ever seen in college football. So if he's not number one in college football, he's 1A. And maybe it's recency bias by me. Maybe it's the fact I never saw Bear Bryant do it. But I think he's probably the greatest college football coach ever. So then you start talking about Bill Belichick, Red Auerbach, Coach K, John Wooden. Nick Saban is in that room. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no argument against it. Now, you don't have to love his style of coaching. You don't have to love the Alabama's dominance in college football. You don't have to love any of the parts about it. But you got to respect it.
Sure.
And I don't see a piece of the resume that is a yeah, but. I don't see, CC, and tell me, there's no big, like, scandal that Nick Saban is overcoming. There's no, oh yeah, but he failed at this place. He couldn't do it there. Like, I don't even find the little, like with Belichick, if you wanted to, I don't think it's fair, but if you wanted to, you could be like, well, how good was he before Brady? Like, how good was he in Cleveland? Like, that doesn't even exist with Nick Saban. So, no, I mean, what does it do for his legacy? It cements him for college football as one of the single greatest coaches in sports history.
Is there something to be said following up on that for the fact that you can't look at, I mean, take out other college coaches, but if you want to compare him to other professional coaches, you can't look at, well, this player, and he had this, this system in place, and this offensive line was dominant. Oh, we had that defense. I mean, these are players that are coming and going, and the one constant is Nick Saban. I mean, it's almost more impressive than things like Bill Belichick and some of these other guys are doing that have their core players for years.
Yes, because it's a couple things with him. For number one, he's a phenomenal teacher. He's also a disciplinarian as far as your body and also training your mind under fire to be able to recall information. So he does such a great job of developing young people. But Nick Saban, at 66, is one of the best recruiters. He's more charismatic in your living room than you realize. He cares more about the players. Nick, you said you were surprised that Nick Saban, after this player had a mental breakdown, a personal foul, then had a little dispute with one of the coaches and the training staff. Surprised, but man, Nick Saban loves his players, and the players love him. You'd have to love a coach to play as hard as the kids at Alabama, as hard as they train and what he puts them through. So Nick Saban, he's on that corner for a lot of different reasons. He's revolutionized recruiting the way it is now. And also, he did the hard thing. He was in Miami, and he was a coach out of place. He is a college football coach trying to coach in the pros, and he realized that when he was in Miami that I can't control the roster. I'm going to go to Alabama. Now, you might not like how he went there, how he made a promise that he wouldn't, but him taking on the challenge of Alabama and now having the same number of titles as Bear Bryant. Nick Saban had one national championship when he got there. And now, 9 years later, we're talking he has 6. Yeah, that would put him in the breath of the greatest ever.
I'm also going to mention something else that now in the micro, just the adjustment last night, that took some temerity, if I may. You're going to change quarterbacks? You're going to go to a true freshman who hadn't played in the game since October?
And throw the ball.
And you're going to, you're going to send him out there to start chucking it deep. And even after he makes a double error, misunderstands what the damn play is called, and then on the play that was supposed to be a run, and he throws a pass, throws an interception, bad footwork, bad fundamentals, no, we're still going to keep running it out there. So you're going to do that. But in the macro, he's done something, CC, that, correct me if my history's wrong on this. It's very difficult, it had been, for you almost reach a point of diminishing returns when it comes to recruiting when you're a dominant college football program, because guys, you have so many 5-stars, the next group of 5-stars says, I want to play immediately. Like, I saw Miami do it.
Well, that's why you have so many other schools that have a lot of good players.
But
When I
saw Miami, we've talked with Ray about that run of Miami in the late 90s, early 2000s, where it was, honestly, they had Sean Taylor and Ed Reed as safeties on the same college football team. They had they had a tight end, backup tight end, and third-string tight end who all made NFL Pro Bowls. And at some point in the early 2000s, I don't know if it was the coaching, I don't know what it was, but some of those star recruits were like, man, I'm going to go somewhere where I can play right now. Mm-hmm. Nick Saban, like you said, got the #1 dual-threat quarterback to come to Alabama when the true freshman quarterback had just won SEC Player of the Year. The ability to inspire guys to want to compete, college players who usually high school kids just want to play, is remarkable to me.
And also as a recruiter, I go full disclosure. About 8 years ago, Nick Saban and I had a serious conversation about me joining Alabama and coaching there. So I know a lot about the program, and I don't know if I'd be here if I had decided to do that. And Nick Saban would be one of the people that I would make that type of change for. But Coach and I, we sat down, had some long conversations about being involved in the Alabama program in a couple different capacities.
I know you don't do a lot with regret, and I know, but I knew that story already. Do you ever think back on that? Like, is that something you I know how much you love coaching.
The only thing that makes me think back on it is just being involved in wide receivers and teaching them the game. And you know Nick is going to get you the best wide receivers, 5-stars. So the ability to be able to teach them, I wouldn't say there's regret there. There's always intrigue on my side is from a coaching standpoint.
Well, having worked with CC and known him a while, here's why he should have no regret and no intrigue. I'll tell you how that thing ends. Cris Carter arrested for punching Nick Saban in the face on the sideline one day at practice. Like, I think it worked out well for you, given his demeanor.
Yeah, Coach and I talked about that, his approach.
His approach?
Yeah.
His ass-chewings on Cris Carter?
I'm no lame kid.
So the Patriots, they host the Titans Saturday night. While the Pats are 2-touchdown favorites, the biggest issue with New England might be the relationship between the owner, the head coach, and the quarterback. After reports of their possible rift came out on Friday, Bill Belichick told reporters that he absolutely plans to coach the Patriots next season. Although between me and you, I'd like to see that in writing. So how is Belichick's relationship with Tom Brady and Robert Kraft? Take a listen to this.
Great. 18 years with Tom and 18 plus 22 with Robert. Been great. Appreciate everything Robert's done for me, the opportunity he's given me, the support, and been pretty lucky to have Tom as quarterback for those 18 years, playing for 17, but 18. You know, he's a great player to coach. He's done a lot for this team. He's been a huge help to me personally.
Cece, regardless of what's going on behind the scenes, this is what you're going to hear from all three of these guys, and it's what we have heard. I mean, I would imagine you're not terribly surprised by Belichick's comments.
I mean, I'm not. I mean, I didn't. You guys had him going all these other places and everything. Like there's a better place to work in New England, being Bill Belichick and the relationship that he had. Also, the thing that I understand is, because coming into the National Football League in 1987, playing against the New England Patriots, Mr. Kraft didn't take over ownership till 1994. But you're talking about one of the worst franchises in the NFL. Like, let's not miss what's happened the last 20 years since Kraft took over. And even in Kraft's early years when he owned the team, they were just an average team. His first 7 years, they were 59 and 53 as an organization. Not a great team, just trying to stay above 500 after a lot of bad years in an ugly stadium. Not only did he revitalize them financially as far as building the stadium, keeping the team there, economically they're one of the most profitable teams. He partners with Bill Belichick, who partners with Tom Brady, and they've got nothing but success. So in those 18 years, they've been to 7 Super Bowls. So for me, it was never an issue. Knowing Mr. Kraft and talking to him and just knowing what goes on in the National Football League, the chances, it's just like Nick Saban. For years and years and years, people say, Nick's leaving Alabama. He's coming back to the NFL. I knew he wouldn't. Personally, I talked to him. He said he didn't want to. He couldn't control the roster like he does in college. And Belichick, there is no better partnership than him and the Kraft family. And I think both parties appreciate what they have in the other.
All right, so what Cece said about the Patriots' history is spot on. They were the Rod Rust Patriots. They were a sad sack franchise that no one... The Patriots becoming this is It's not the same as if the Browns were to become this in 20 years, but it's not that far of a departure. Now, prior to Belichick and Brady getting there, they did make a Super Bowl since Kraft took over with Parcells and Bledsoe. Now, they lost the Super Bowl. They did make one. They had some success, but nothing like this. But here's what jumps out to me about Bill Belichick's comments. That he made them? That was a radio interview with Michael Holley. We play Tom Brady radio interviews every single week on this show because he does one every single week. We play Bill Belichick press conferences almost every week on this show because he has to. He's mandated to do one multiple times a week as a head coach of the team. Bill Belichick, and the Patriots released a statement about this story. Bill Belichick goes out of his way to do a radio interview with Michael Holley, who wrote a book about the Patriots. He has a relationship with him, someone that he trusts, that he can get his message out there. And one other thing, and this...
Those are the only people he does interviews with.
Right. The people he trusts, people he knows, absolutely
Yes.
right. But Belichick doing a non-mandated media appearance during the season.
How do you know it was non-mandated? How do you know Bob Kraft didn't say, you know what, we gotta put this out
mandated
there?
by the league. I mean mandated by the league. The league mandates you.
This had the feel
And
of...
I just, Mr. Kraft is not going to make Bill Belichick do anything. And Bill Belichick is not the kind of person that can be forced into doing some type of media.
So why do it?
I think he wanted to get that message out. Now, whether the message is you believe or not, that is in the eye of the beholder. One other thing stuck out to me.
Why wouldn't we? You don't believe it? I believe there's zero chance that he leaves New England.
So I don't believe there's zero chance he leaves New England. But what I certainly don't believe is the statement the team released, because someone involved in that statement is the source of this story. Like, that I can't get around. This isn't the National Enquirer. This isn't Us Weekly, no disrespect to that publication. This is a very well-respected journalist in Seth Wickersham, he wrote the Jerry Jones story, he wrote the Seattle Seahawks locker room story, and now he's written this story. He is not going to print with that without one of the primaries involved being a part of it.
Yeah, Tom Brady might be disgruntled. He might be upset about his guy can't be in the locker room. Okay. But Bill Belichick going somewhere else, or Kraft, or that he would have the out in his contract. Like, we don't even know what his contract is. So to assume that, to me, is a major just leap. All right? There were some truths in the article, and I believe Guerrero and his relationship and not being able to work there, that hurt Brady. Brady not wanting Garoppolo there, I believe that to be true. But Belichick leaving, don't believe that to be true.
Let me add one other thing, and this one you might totally throw aside. But when you talk about Robert Kraft, you call him Mr. Kraft. When seemingly everyone talks about a certain group of NFL owners, they get the genuflection of Mr. Mara, Mr. Rooney, Mr. Kraft. That's how I've heard Tom Brady talk about it. And that's how I heard Bill Belichick talk about Robert Kraft back when Deflategate was going on. Maybe it is totally silly. It was very interesting to me to hear Bill Belichick repeatedly call him Robert there. It's very interesting. Go ahead.
Mr. Kraft, I go out of my way because it's the way I was raised. Mr. Kraft prefers his friends to call him Robert. He tells me all the time, don't call me Mr. Kraft. He prefers everyone to call him Robert.
Okay, all right.
That's his own personal preference.
You mentioned that Brady might not be happy with the Guerrero situation, didn't want Garoppolo there. That doesn't, since Brady is obviously the present and future of the team because they have no contingency at quarterback anymore, that you're still, with that being the situation, you're still leaving it at 0% for Bill Belichick to decide? 0%. Okay.
I think that article, and you made a good point yesterday, and I've heard this before, is that you have to think about who that article helps when you read it. You have to think about who would benefit from that article coming out. And I thought it was two sides. I thought it was either Bill Belichick or Robert Kraft. I don't think Tom Brady came out of that article looking great in any way, especially when you see the disgruntled behavior between him and Jimmy Garoppolo and all of it in these closed-door meetings.
Or maybe Tom Brady's just like any of the other quarterbacks, Brett Favre, Joe Montana, who didn't want to mentor the guy behind him. Maybe he's just normal.
Jenna's not disagreeing with that. She's saying, but it doesn't benefit Brady for it to be out there that he wasn't mentoring Jimmy Garoppolo.
Correct.
Even if it's normal, it doesn't help his image.
Right, and that part I believe to be true.
Yeah.
Right. So I am interested in who called Seth Wickersham. Like, I'm interested.
Right.
And
I think it's either
like
Belichick
I said
or
yesterday,
Robert Kraft.
I'm willing to take any wager on Belichick coaching New England.
And I'm just waiting for you to give me. I asked for 10-1 yesterday.
I'll give you 10-1 on $10,000.
Okay, I'm waiting to understand
No, don't
what
have to look up in the air. You know exactly what it is.
I'm doing the math.
Yeah,
You're risking the 10 or I'm risking the 10.
All right, let's move on to the NFL again. Antonio Brown and the Steelers are preparing to host the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday. Big question for the Steelers is the health of Antonio Brown, who hasn't played since suffering that calf injury back in Week 15. He's been posting some really creative rehab workout videos on social, much like I do sometimes, CC. Brown spoke about his rehab process yesterday. Take a listen.
Being injured is not fun. I wish it on no one. It's either harder to come back, but I'm grateful to be here today. I don't think no man playing this game, never had adversity. So I'm glad I'm able to be on my feet today, talk to you guys.
Should we expect to see the same Antonio Brown out there on Sunday that we've seen all year?
We'll see. You guys stay tuned.
So how much do the Steelers, CC, really need Antonio Brown back when you're talking not just about this game, but just about this Jaguars defense?
First things first. Antonio Brown, he's hired two guys that used to work for me. One named Cris, who I still actively work with, and another one named Ron D'Angelo. He has two of the best trainers, stretch people in the world. This guy spends an inordinate amount of money on his body. The Steelers need him. He's a special player. Like, you need special players for the special time of the year. And the stress that he can put on the defense. And he makes Jacksonville, they have to make a declaration. Are you going to put Jalen Ramsey on him all over the field? And then if you're able to do that, they're able to look at what other matchups that they want to go to and how many times they're going to target him. So this is very interesting how healthy he is and what is Jacksonville going to do? Are they going to treat him like he's healthy, which I believe they will? I believe that Jalen will shadow him all over the field. This will be one of the great matchups that we've seen in the playoffs. Jalen Ramsey, either one or two, him and Xavier Rhodes, the best corner in the NFL, and the best wide receiver in AB. So I expect AB to be at full strength. So the Steelers need him because you can't generate the number of plays that he can generate through the passing game, through the screen game, and he draws so much attention, it helps out the running game and the other wide receivers.
Hold on, before I answer, I just want to make sure I heard you something correctly on there. You expect AB to be at full strength?
Yes.
Okay. And AB works with two guys you used to work with, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Two guys used to be on my payroll.
Okay. All right, got it.
For source
all right, so
material?
I expect, my source says AB is going to be at full strength,
Okay.
and that's important because I don't have many rules in the NFL. One of them is this. You cannot lose a league MVP and be okay. Carson Wentz, he went down, and guess what? The Eagles aren't okay. Todd Gurley's in the MVP race. The Rams only give him the ball 14 times. Guess what? They weren't okay. Antonio Brown was in the MVP race. If he were to not be able to play this weekend or not be at full strength, maybe the Steelers can win. But it's not a foregone conclusion. Oh, Nick, how can you say that? Blake Bortles is awful, and the Jags looked... Man, the Jags did not get to the playoffs and win their division because of great quarterback play. They got to the playoffs and won their division because they have a punch-you-in-the-mouth defense. And guess which defense of the 8 defenses that played this weekend looked the best? The Jacksonville Jaguars defense. Guess which defense doesn't have a weakness? The Jacksonville Jaguars defense. So, you can't be missing Antonio Brown and just be like, oh, it'll be fine. Could the Steelers win without him? Yeah, one playoff game, sure. But it would be much closer than it would be with him. And, of course they need him at full strength.
And the one thing Jacksonville knows, they can't get in a track meet with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So when you have AB out there, they can play at such a pace and score so many points. Let's not forget who Jacksonville's quarterback is. Right. So if they get off to a good start with AB in the lineup, man, Jacksonville could get blown out in this game.
Right. Well, I also think you bring up an incredible point. I think a lot of people you fuzz over what happened last week. It was a terrible game between the Jaguars and the Bills, and both teams are terrible, and whoever the Jaguars play right now, they're going to lose to. And what happens there is you kind of gloss over how good that Jaguars defense really is.
What would people be saying this week if the Jags had beaten the Bills 38-34? We'd be like, oh,
Okay.
The Jags could be dangerous. Like, Bortles might have figured it out. That would be more concerning to me because that's not sustainable for the Jags. The way they have to beat you is with their defense. And so it was an ugly game with bad quarterback play. And so that's what our lasting memory of that football game is. But you can't miss Antonio Brown and be okay.
No, and the progress that we saw with Blake Bortles in the last month of the season, we didn't see in the first playoff game. We saw a quarterback that was terrified. We saw an offense that was terrified to call plays. Antonio Brown being in the lineup, it puts so much pressure on the Jags and their coaching staff that, man, we have to generate some points because we know our defense can't stop them from scoring.
And CeCe's point about what the Steelers can do with Antonio Brown, one thing we do know about the Jags, because they're such a defense-dominated team, they are the team left in the playoffs, maybe Philly as well, depending on how Foles plays, that if they get down 10 points, the game's over. Like, if the Jags are down 13-3, you can watch something else.
Right.
Like, the game is over. The Jags have to keep it close. Antonio Brown gives you the ability in one play to blow the game wide open.
By the way,
as a returner.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I watched all of Antonio Brown's videos or the things that he posted. If those are your trainers, I would very much like to meet some of those guys, spend some time with them, get myself into a sports bra, get out there.
Stuff, you post stuff, LeBron posts stuff.
It's all good.
Oh, see, now you're cool with that. Okay, see, okay, there we go.
What I was going to say is it is very impressive the work that he's doing right now. Hard to do even if you're not injured, but some of the stuff he was doing with his mobility and flexibility and strength.
Yeah, he does everything that make him look like a diva wide receiver, but behind the scenes, he's one of the hardest working football players. It
was certainly not the night LeBron will remember when he's 85 years old and retired and telling LeBron IV about his career. Cleveland got blown out by Minnesota 127-99. LeBron only scored 10 points and had a plus-minus of -39. LeBron was asked about that career worst mark after the game.
I've won a game and had a bad plus-minus before, so what does that matter? Don't give a damn about no damn plus-minus.
Do you think anything of what plagued you guys tonight had anything in common with some of the other losses you've had recently?
We're just not playing well right now. That's just it.
Okay, newsflash, the Cavs aren't going to win every single game in the regular season. So
this was a bad one, though.
This was a bad one, but should anything that happens in the regular season worry the Cavs? I mean, should good days, bad days?
Short of injury, there is nothing that could happen prior to the final 2 weeks, 3 weeks of the regular season that would concern me. Just a quick history lesson for the audience. 3 Januaries ago, Cavs lost 9 of 10 while LeBron just took a mid-season vacation. Just decided, I'm going to go to the national championship game, root on Ohio State. Yeah. I'm going to hang out in Miami, and the Cavs fell apart. 2 years ago, the Cavs in January fired their head coach. Last year, the Cavs this time of year lost 6 out of 8. This year, they've now lost 5 of 7. And the defense since that Golden State game, where even though they lost, the defense played well, has given up 109, 104, 110, 102, 127, 127. So if it were a different time of year, if they weren't trying to get Isaiah into the flow, and if they were a team that didn't have LeBron James, be a lot of reason to be concerned. But I am not going to let the typical January swoon trick me, not this year.
Well, if you look at that, only one of those bad Januaries led to a championship. To me, they're an older team, so you don't worry about it as much. But are you concerned about a team that plays bad basketball? Yes, I'd be concerned about if it was the Warriors. I'd be concerned if it was Houston. I'd be concerned about San Antonio. Yeah, so why wouldn't I be concerned about Cleveland? Now, Cleveland has gone through this, so this sets me up to how easy can Cleveland win the East? Ultimately, that's what it matters. Does the first series, how many games does it go? Because if they can't get to the finals where they are fresh, if they have a couple very, very tough series in the East, I already believe that they're not as good as the Warriors. So if they wear themselves out with a 2 or 3 seed and they have a couple tough series in the East, it will only lead to them losing in the finals by a worse margin than it would be. So getting to the finals healthy is one, or getting to the playoffs healthy is one thing. Getting there playing with some type of continuity is another thing. It's going to take some time for Isaiah. But it does matter. Why? It would matter for all the other teams. Why wouldn't it matter for Cleveland?
Well,
Go ahead, Jenna.
No, there was a game a couple weeks ago where the Cavs were down by double digits, fought all the way back, and you said, hey, look, any other team, any other Cavs team would be like, you know what, forget it, we lost this one, but they fought back, and that was great. Is there something to be said for not... You made the reference this morning, you're down 0-3 in a tennis match and maybe just giving up the set and trying hard later. Maybe this is how they keep, because they are aging, maybe this is how they keep themselves fresh, not killing themselves for those big comeback wins now and saving it for later in the
No, they
season.
tried to come back, but they was garbage.
So, well, they tried to come back offensively. They didn't give extra effort defensively. They didn't ratchet that up. So I just want to make it clear, because this was going on during the national championship.
Yeah, and I was watching both of them.
I know you were, but I'm guessing a lot of people weren't watching it because the national championship game was on. So I had the Cavs game on mute, and it was instantly 20-6. Like, instantly, the Timberwolves were up big. And the Cavs decided, and I'll see, my guess is they shot 10 three-pointers in the first quarter. I didn't look this up, so I apologize. I'm going to do it live on the air. 1 of 10 from 3 in the first quarter. They got down early, and they're like, hey, here's how we're going to come back. We're going to shoot threes. And if we hit our threes, we're going to be back in it. If not, we're not really going to engage on effort. What I said in the pre-show meeting was, if you watch a tennis match sometimes, if a team, if someone loses a tough game to break their serve early and they're down 3-0 in a set, rather than giving full effort, knowing I'm probably losing the set anyway, they mail in the remainder of that set so they are in better position to win the final 2 sets or the next set. The Cavs, and by the way, you mentioned Golden State, the Warriors do this as well, where I'm not really, if things aren't going for us early, I'm not really going to fully engage. The difference between the Cavs and the Warriors is the Warriors are better positioned than any team in basketball history to beat mediocre to bad teams, even when they're not fully engaged, because of the overwhelming waves of talent. The Warriors can be not fully engaged in a game, and when they're fully healthy, still have a 6-minute stretch that blows you off the court.
And they play better defense.
Oh, far better defense. The Cavs, it felt to me, CC, like in that 20-game stretch when they won 18 games, that the Cavs proved to themselves, okay, when we need to, we can play adequate defense. And since then, even prior to that Warriors game, they gave 119, 112. They're giving up like 115 a night over the last month. It feels like they have said, okay, we know we can do it. We don't really need to do it every night. And right now, that's what you're seeing.
Like the Cavs have stayed outside in Minnesota. It was plenty cold in Minnesota. It was a bad game. You see this a lot in the NBA with the 82-game schedule. They tried to come back, but also, we've gone through this whole segment. We don't give Minnesota any credit. Right. Minnesota played really well, especially to start the game. And they took it out. They took it away from the Cavs.
And so go ahead, Jenna.
So the other question I have for you is, LeBron's played every game this season. Does he need a break? Is there something to be said for him just going away for a beat or two and coming back a little fresher? I mean, he's done that in years past.
Well, this is really the first bad game. So, no, it's important that LeBron plays now because we just brought IT back. Right. Like, how are we going to get any rhythm with him? Kevin Love's playing the best basketball of his career. Now, J.R. Smith, Nick need to admit him, that's his guy. J.R. is playing a shell of himself. Like, if they didn't have D. Wade behind him, we would be talking about how could we bench J.R. He's not great defensively and hadn't shot the ball or scored on a consistent basis. So LeBron had one bad night. But the Cavs, they've been in this rut for 2 weeks.
Cece, you mentioned a name that, Jenna, the question was, is anything that could concern me? I do want to see how Kevin Love responds to having Isaiah Thomas out there now. Now Isaiah's in the starting lineup. Now we saw yesterday, LeBron was deferring to Isaiah early, letting him try to get off. It didn't get going. Kevin Love, now he had a really bad shooting night. He was 1 of 7. But this is now 2 out of 3 games Kevin Love has had really, really poor shooting nights with Isaiah Thomas involved. I do want to see that. Cece, you mentioned it. It's the best Kevin Love's played since his time in Minnesota.
Yes.
It was all year without Isaiah. That is something worth watching. There are a lot of things worth watching. And you mentioned LeBron's rest. LeBron's going to play 75 to 77 games this year. They're going to find 5 or 6 or 7 games that he's not going to play. Yeah. He's not going to take 2 weeks off like he did a few years ago. But there are small things to watch. I'm just not going to freak out about the Cavs when I know they're winning these.
I'm Jenna Wolfe, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.